In ancient times, a banquet organized by Daji and King Zhou gathered the most outstanding literary figures of all time. Cao Zhi from the Three Kingdoms period, Wang Bo from the early Tang Dynasty, Li Bai from the prosperous Tang Dynasty, and Su Shi from the Northern Song Dynasty were invited to the event. On the surface, King Zhou aimed to select the greatest literary figure in China through a competition, but behind the scenes, he and Daji concealed a conspiracy. During the banquet, while the guests were in high spirits, King Zhou posed a challenge. He requested the four eternal poets to publicly describe the beauty of Daji. Renowned figures from the past, such as Sima Qian, Tao Yuanming, and Fan Zhongyan, were invited as judges, using electronic voting to determine the winner. As the four literary giants held similar esteemed positions in Chinese literature, they attached great importance to the outcome of this competition. Cao Zhi depicted the ethereal beauty of Daji like the goddess Shi Shi, using his masterful writing style, graceful like a startled swan, elegant as a wandering dragon, radiating like autumn chrysanthemums, flourishing like spring pines, ethereal as the veil of light clouds concealing the moon, drifting like the wind playing with snow. His assistant, Xiaolingyun, applauded enthusiastically, proclaiming Cao Zhi's talents as being able to compose poems in 7 steps and having astonishing talent. Li Bai hummed briefly and then, after finishing his drink, immediately responded with his unique admiration for Yang Guifei through the poem Qingping Tiao, imagining her dress, her face in mind, the spring breeze brushes the railing, dew thickens. If not for the view of the Jade Mountain, it would be meeting beneath the moon at the Jade Terrace. His assistant, Du Fu, known for his poem A Nation Shattered, Mountains and Rivers Remain, promptly stood up and applauded loudly in approval. Su Dongpa, who had never liked describing women, particularly despised Daji. Seizing the opportunity, he recited his famous song dedicated to his dead wife, Jiang Chengzi, 10 years of life and death, vast and boundless, no thoughts. Self hard to forget, a lonely tomb 1,000 miles away, nowhere to speak of desolation. Upon hearing this, Daji's brows furrowed, sensing Su Dongpa's insinuation that she was a fox spirit residing in a tomb. Just as she was suppressing her anger, Su Dongpa's younger brother, Su Shi, suggested presenting a joyful poem instead. Thus, Su Dongpa immediately shared his playful work, 80-year-old groom with an 18-year-old bride, silver hair contrasting with red adornment, mandarin ducks wrapped in a double bed at night, a single pear tree presses down on the sea of flowers. This sparked laughter among the audience. Though King Zhou, despite having limited education, was displeased by Daji's scowling eyebrows and wide-open almond eyes, he had no choice but to temporarily suppress his feelings. Next was Wang Bo's turn. Despite his fame for preface to the pavilion of Prince Tang, being young, he found it challenging to describe Daji's beauty, which was neither like an endless autumn river nor a solitary sunset glow. In his dilemma, he could only recite his work Xian Yun Tanying Riri, expressing the changing times and the disappearance of the imperial prince from the pavilion. His assistant, Luo Bin Wang, broke into a cold sweat in response. In the midst of a silent and tense atmosphere, King Zhou, unable to bear it any longer, finally erupted. His original plan was to have the 4 contestants infatuated with Daji, instigating conflicts among the different factions of literati, resulting in self-destruction. However, he did not anticipate the atmosphere turning sour so quickly, from Su Dongpa's mockery of his relationship with Daji to Wang Bo's insinuation of him losing power. Unable to tolerate it any longer, he immediately summoned the palace guards to drag the 4 participants out of the Wu Gate and execute them. At this critical moment, Wang Bo's assistant, Luo Bin Wang, saw the danger and swiftly modified his well-known work, Condemnation of Emperor Wu, into condemnation of King Zhou and Daji's plot against Chinese literature. He declared their conspiracy to destroy Chinese literature and called upon the numerous esteemed literati present to unite in condemning them, invoking heavenly deities and marshalling earthly forces to surround King Zhou, Daji, and the palace guards, trapping them like fish in a net. Unfortunately, upon seeing beautiful Daji, these refined gentlemen were immediately overcome by desire and found themselves unable to act. In the blink of an eye, King Zhou and Daji, taking advantage of the distraction, escaped through smoke and fled back to the Zhaixing Tower in Chaoga, their fox den. To find out what happens next, stay tuned for the next installment.